Hello, hello! Welcome everybody. Today we're going over Genesis 35. If you hear a lot of noise in the background, it's because the dogs are a-playing today. And I don't like to stop them from playing, so hopefully they just keep the noise level down. Hear that, guys? Or I should say ladies. Alright, Genesis 35. Remember, this is King James Version that I'm reading from. We just went through the defile of Danae, and I talked a lot about the difference between a just kill and a revenge kill, and how you can, I don't want to say you can, but it is acceptable in God's eyes in certain situations. There's a just kill. But as soon as you do it out of revenge in your heart, it's no longer just. You know, somebody could murder your mother. A terrible thing. That person, cold-blooded murderer, it may be just to kill them. Or somebody may be holding a gun, to a loved one and threatening them. And you get the upper hand and you have to take them out. There's plenty of scenarios where police officers are just in their kill, where people are just in their kill. But the moment that you do that out of revenge, it's no longer just. And this isn't just in God's eyes, which is the most important eyes, so it's really the only one that matters. But think about it in the legal sense. If anyone's ever watched Law and Order or something, as soon as the lawyer of the defendant, of the prosecution, can prove that the defendant acted out of revenge, then the just kill goes away. People will a lot of times find him guilty, There's a movie called A Time to Kill with Matthew McConaughey and Samuel L. Jackson. They kind of go into this. And the whole argument in the movie was the father of the daughter who had been raped, which was played by Samuel L. Jackson, was he acting out of revenge, or was it a just kill? And again, the kill itself, from the outside looking in, might be just. Samuel L. Jackson's daughter was raped. These men did a terrible thing. Just kill. But as soon as he does it out of revenge, it's no longer just. And that's even in our own modern day legal system. As soon as they can prove that you did it out of revenge and not out of justice, then it's a whole other ballgame. And that's what was going on there. And we see that, we'll see later on that even Jacob gets really pissed off at his boy. I mean, he does there, but later on he kind of curses them, his two sons that went in and killed out of revenge versus doing it out of justice. You may say murder's murder, but there's a difference between murder and taking a life. A just kill versus a revenge kill. And only God really knows what's in your heart. But as soon as you do it out of revenge, it's no longer just. Even if the scenario, looking at it, does say it's just. If in your heart's out of revenge, it's not. Alright, sorry I re-explained the whole last video like that, but I just feel like that's a very important concept to understand, especially when you're reading the Bible. Moving on, Genesis 35, King James Version, verse 1. Doggies, calm down. And God said unto Jacob, Arise, go to Bethel, and dwell there, and make there an altar unto God, that appeared unto thee when thou fleddest from the face of Esau thy brother. So, Jacob's two sons had tricked this entire kingdom into having all their men circumcised, and then when they're all, after their prince had basically raped these boys' sister, they tricked them, had them circumcised. When they were all healing from their wounds, they went and slaughtered them all. Jacob comes in later with the rest of his sons, sees what they've done, gets really pissed off at them, and they got to flee now, because he's like, look what you did. I think more likely, I said this in the last video, Jacob was probably coming in, and he was probably going to kill this king and the prince that raped his daughter, but I highly doubt he was going to, maybe, but I don't think he would have killed the rest of the men, especially after they circumcised themselves. Maybe he would have, but it would have been just if it would have been told to do it by God and he wasn't doing it out of revenge in his heart. His sons are doing it out of revenge. Not to mention, and this is why I really don't think he would have slaughtered the entire peoples. All right, you can go outside for just a second. Because of the fact that he gets so mad at his sons, saying, look what you did. Now all the other kings won't trust us. They'll want to gang up against us. All the other kings in the area are going to come after us now because of what you did. Now, if we'd gone in and we'd just done a just kill, killing the prince who raped my daughter, the other kings might have been like, yeah, that's a just kill. You know, can't get mad at him there. But since you tricked their entire peoples into circumcising themselves and then killed them while they were healing from their wounds, that's not a just kill. These other kings are going to see us as untrustworthy and terrible people, and they're going to gang up and come against us. You know, they're going to work together to do us harm. So that's why God tells Jacob to leave, to go to Bethel, the place he went when Esau was after him, because now these other kings are going to be after him as well because of what his sons did. Verse 2. Then Jacob said unto his household and to all that were with him, Put away the strange gods that are among you, and be clean, and change your garments. And let us arise and go up to Bethel, and I will make there an altar unto God, who answered me in the day of my distress, and was with me in the way which I went. Put away your strange gods. So you got to remember, Jacob, like his father Isaac and like his father before him Abraham, is taking people into his service. This is again why I don't think in the previous chapter where his sons slaughtered everyone, that Jacob would have slaughtered everyone. He probably would have killed the prince and the prince's father, the king, who raped his daughter, but he wouldn't have slaughtered the entire village. He would have taken them into his household. You know, they were converting people. You know, this is why the bloodlines thing is so ridiculous to me as far as being saved by bloodlines or whatnot, that some Jewish people and other people believe. It's ridiculous. Anyone can be saved. And Abraham's constantly trying to save people. Yes, his bloodline's blessed because they'll be priests unto the world and Christ will come from them. But the reason that they're priests unto the world is because they're saving the world. You know, when Adam's children, when the Sethites come down from their plateau on the mountain that they're sitting on after the Garden of Eden, and they go out to the rest of the world, there's people out in the rest of the world. Cain had built cities, and there were people all over. They were the chosen line to go out and spread the message to these other peoples. Even though Adam and his bloodline was a different bloodline, they're constantly talking about the bloodlines, his bloodline is meant to save this other bloodline. It's not meant to that, you know, this bloodline of people out there in the world are going to constantly just stay in evil ways. No, you're a priest unto the world. You will be a blessing unto the world, Abraham, in your line. You are going to go and spread my message and save all these other people. And that's what's going on here in verse 2. And Jacob said unto his household and to all that were with him, Put away the strange gods that are among you, and be clean, and change your garments. So these people that he'd been taken in, a lot of them still had their strange gods. And he's saying, put them away. This is not the way. You must follow God. You must follow the one true God who is with me, who has saved us, who is the God above all gods. Because he's taken in people into his household to take care of him. He's a good man. He's a good Christian. Even though Christ is around at the time, they were Christians just like Christians today. They're trying to convert and save souls everywhere they go. So he's bringing people into his household. He's being kind, giving them food, giving them shelter, all this sort of thing. But he's saying, hey, you know, if you're with me, you got to put away these strange gods because they're going to be a curse to you and to us. You have to worship the one true God. Verse 4, And they gave unto Jacob all the strange gods which were in their hand, and all their earrings which were in their ears, and Jacob hid them under the oak which was by Shechem. And they journeyed, and the terror of God was upon the cities that were round about them, and they did not pursue after the sons of Jacob. So they listened. The people, you know, maybe not all of them. Maybe some of them left and like, no, I'm going to hold on to my gods. And maybe not everyone in their heart let go of worshiping these false gods. But most of them, it seems, were like, okay, you're right. And they had seen the glory of Jacob's God. And also they'd seen the glory as far as the, how do I say this? The purity, the piety, the kind, generous nature of Jacob. You know, this is a good man who's taking me and my family into his household, help feeding us and helping to shelter and protect us from these wicked kings and people all around us. And he's doing so because he's serving his God. Maybe there's something to his God here. You know, I've seen all these crazy miracles, and I've seen Jacob's righteousness and his just and his loving nature, there's something to this guy. I'm going to follow this his God, because there was something going on here that I want to be a part of. So, and they journeyed, and terror of God was upon the cities. So, upon terror, all the cities were, well, they're going to the place, to Bethel, so they can get away from these kings who might be wanting to do them harm. As they're going there, all these cities are scared of them. Now, again, they're leaving because Jacob, under the, wise counsel of God, told him that, hey, you got to get out of here. These kings are going to more than likely gang up against you because they don't trust you anymore after what your sons did. So he has to get out of there. But as he's passing one kingdom at a time, they don't have time to join up, So they're scared of him along the way. They know he has the glory of God. And it's not really in the Bible, but it's in a lot of the non-canonical texts that Christ would have read, and he never spoke against, so there's probably something to him, that Jacob's sons, so specifically Judah, were total badasses, like hardcore warrior, crazy warrior guys. Like, Jacob has a following, but he also has these 12 sons to be like his 12 generals, So he's mighty. And as they're passing, these other cities are scared of him. First, they heard what he just did to this other kingdom, and they don't have time to match up, to make alliances as he's journeying. So they, instead of attacking him, they're just scared. Like, is he going to come attack us and wipe us out like he did these other people? We got to stay behind our walls and stay defensive. And this is exactly what Jacob wants, because he doesn't want to pick a fight with any of them. He's not looking to do any of them harm, so he just wants to pass peacefully through. And these people just want him to go by and not attack them. So they hide in their citied walls and then don't attack Jacob as he goes through, because it says the terror of God is upon them, because they're scared of what he's going to do to them, what God through Jacob will do to them. So they let Jacob pass in peace, basically. So Jacob came to Luz, which is the land of Canaan, that is Bethel, and all the people that were with him. And he built there an altar and called the place El Bethel, because, what does that mean exactly? God of the house of God. Because there God appeared unto him, and he fled from the face of his brother. So, yeah, this is the place where he fled when Esau threatened to kill him years ago. But Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died. So Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died. Deborah, I think she had kids. I can't remember if she had kids of her own or not now. It's killing me. But Rebekah is Isaac's wife. So Rebekah is Jacob and Esau's mother. Died, and she was buried beneath Bethel under an oak, and the name of it was called Allon-Bachuth, which means terebinth of weeping. And God appeared unto Jacob again when he came out of Paddan Aram, and blessed him. And God said unto him, Thy name is Jacob. Thy name shall not be called any more Jacob, but Israel shall be the name, and he called his name Israel. So just like God gave Abraham and Sarah new names, he's doing the same thing with Jacob here. Now, Abram and Sarah had been given new names because these were kind of polytheistic pagan names that they had prior to, and God wanted to put his godly spin on them, And in this, Jacob isn't really an ungodly name, but he wants to define what Jacob's lineage is going to become. I remember Jacob, when he wrestled with God or the angel, whoever it may have been, I can't remember the exact definition, but Israel, El, is a name for God. It is the most high God, El. Sometimes, Satanist or polytheistic, Gnostics will use El as the name of God, but they're referring to the devil. But obviously, when Jacob and the Israelites use the word El, they're not referring to the devil, because that's not their God. And Israel means struggle with God. It's either struggle or wrestle with God. And it's a foretelling. It's like foreshadowing. His line, which is the blessed line, which Christ will come from, will struggle with God. It'll be a constant struggle. Look at the Israelites throughout history. They're constantly coming to God in times of trouble, and then falling away from God when things get easy, and then coming back to God when things get hard, and falling away from God when things get easy. So they're constantly struggling with their relationship with God, and that's what Israel means. And God said unto him, I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall be of thee, and kings shall come of thy loins. Same blessing basically that was given to Abraham and Isaac. And the land which I gave Abraham and Isaac, to thee I will give it, and to thy seed after thee will I give the land. So understand, I've gone into this many times. The blessing itself, the reason why Esau didn't get it, and Jacob did, why Isaac got it and Ishmael didn't get the full blessing, is because they didn't get it. The blessing is something you have to get, you have to understand, you have to comprehend it. The blessing is that it's not about this world. It's about the next world. It's about the heavenly. Not living for glory or fame or fortune or power or sex or whatever it may be, but living for God. See, Esau, a great hunter in the land, again, I've said this before, he was using his prowess as a hunter to gain popularity. He's bringing in venison and all these meats and feeding the people, and he's not doing it out of the kindness of his heart necessarily. Maybe that's how it started. And I don't think Esau was entirely an evil man, but he noticed the power it gave him, the glory, the prestige that he got from bringing in these foods. Look at the way his father Isaac loved him because he was always bringing him choice meats. And if Esau started to do it for that, not to do it for the glory of God, not to do it for the heavenly or for helping his neighbors, fellow man, but because of the glory and the prestige and the power he got from it. Whereas Jacob did things for the glory of God, and he got it. He got the blessing because he understood what the blessing was all about. Then that is different than the land, than inheriting the land. Okay? This is holy land, but also the reason why the land is so important is because of its location. Not only that it's holy, but it's such a vibrant trade route. I mean, it's right on the Mediterranean. So you can go up to Europe, you can go to Italy, you can go to all the islands of the Mediterranean, all these great civilizations, the Romans, the Greeks. But also, further east is the caravans, the merchant caravans. So the message, if you're located where Israel's located, you're in prime real estate to take this message of God and spread it throughout the world. It'd be a lot harder to do so if you were like in the middle of, I don't know, western Nebraska, let's say. If you're in the middle of western Nebraska, you're not near a lot of rivers to carry the message. You're not near the oceans to carry the message. There's not a lot of caravans traveling through there. So it's not a prime real estate. Israel, the land that is given to Jacob, is prime real estate for spreading this message. And that's why the land is so important, inheriting the land. But that is different than the blessing. The blessing is understanding that it's about the heavenly, and as far as Abraham and Jacob's line go, the blessing is that you, since your people will understand the blessing and will hold on to this message and record it throughout history, I'm going to give you Christ. He's going to come from your loins, your line. And God went up from him in the place where he talked with him. And Jacob set up a pillar in the place where he talked with him, even a pillar of stone. And he poured a drink offering thereon, and he poured oil thereon. And Jacob called the name of the place where God spake with him Bethel. And they journeyed from Bethel, and there was but a little way to come to Ephrath, and Rachel travailed, and she laid hard labor. Travailed. Okay, that means she was in childbirth. Yeah, all right. Duh. And it came to pass, when she was in hard labor, that the midwife said unto her, Fear not, thou shalt have this son also. And it came to pass, as her soul was in departing, for she died in childbirth, that she called his name Benoni, but his father called him Benjamin. So Benoni means son of my sorrow, because she's dying. Benjamin is what Jacob names him, son of the right hand. I doubt he wanted son of my sorrow, to be the kid's name. And Rachel died and was buried in, that's a depressing name. You don't want to have that name. Yikes. Benjamin, son of my right hand or whatever, is a bit more, nice of a name. And Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, which is Bethlehem. Remember that. But remember, Rachel is Jacob's favorite. This is his number one gal. He's got 2 wives, and he's got both of their handmaids. He's probably got other concubines. They're kind of crazy perverts back in the day. But Rachel's his favorite. Rachel's the wife that he wanted from the get-go, and now he loses her. So this is very hard for Jacob, and he's just lost his mother as well. And he has to leave his homeland because of what his son's done. He's going through hard times right now. And Jacob set a pillar upon her grave, that is the pillar of Rachel's grave unto this day. I just looked it up. People still make pilgrimages there. They know where this is at. It's so crazy to me. People still make pilgrimages to all these holy spots, even the place where Noah's Ark came to rest. They have for thousands of years. And what's funny is it's still there. Scientists just not too long ago said, we think we found the location of the lost Ark of Noah. And it's exactly where the Bible said. They found an outline of wood that is an ark, and they found all kinds of fecal matter from species that aren't native to the area and all this stuff in this location where the ark said is to rest, where people have been making pilgrimages to for thousands of years. But yet these scientists are we found it. Dude, it's never lost. This stuff is never lost. This is why the Bible is such a good historical book, even if you're looking at it from a secular point of view. They keep finding cities that they didn't think existed, that the Bible said existed, exactly where the Bible said it was. And these pompous jerks are we found it! We found it! You didn't find anything. It was never lost. Read the Bible. It's right where he said. And this is true with Rachel's pillar, too. So verse 21. And Israel journeyed and spread his tent beyond the tower of Adar. It was Adar or Eder. That doesn't help. And it came to pass when Israel dwelt in that land that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah his father's concubine, and Israel, which is Jacob, heard it. Now the sons of Jacob were 12. The sons of Leah, Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, and Simeon and Levi and Judah and Issachar and Zebulun, the sons of Rachel, Joseph and Benjamin, and the sons of Bilhah, Rachel's handmaid, Dan and Naphtali, and the sons of Zilpah, Leah's handmaid, Gad, Asher, and Asher. These are the sons of Jacob, which were born to him in Paddan Aram. And Jacob came unto Isaac his father, unto Mamre, and to the city of Arba, which is Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac sojourned. So it just goes through his sons, who the 12 sons are and everything. But it's brushed over, and there's much more about this in the Testimony of the 12 Patriarchs and a few other books about how Reuben laid with his father's concubine, and this is not a good thing, and some crazy stuff came up of it, because you don't really have sex with the person that your dad's having sex with, and Jacob probably shouldn't have had a concubine. See, there's so much more to these stories that's just in the Bible. The Bible gives a brief overlay because a lot of it is just like a textbook. I've said this before. You get your textbook. Oh, cool. All right, this is what's going on with Napoleon. But the textbook give references to other books with more detailed information. And you use the textbook as your verification, and you go off from there to find more details about certain things. And the fact that Reuben laid with his father's concubine, it causes a lot of bad stuff to happen. But the message is so easily, it's just brushed over. The reason it is because the people of this time knew the story already. They already knew about all this. It's just we better mention it because it's so well known. If we don't mention it, it's going to look weird. But we don't need to go into detail about it because everyone already knows about this stuff. And there's a lot of this in the Bible that to us now today, we're what? Because we don't read the non-canonical books. We don't read the extra biblical writings that Christ would have read. He did read, and he did not speak out against. That's the main thing I want people to understand. Always take the Bible as your blueprint, as your reference point, and make sure things don't contrast with the Bible. But there are plenty of extra non-canonical writings that are pretty legit. And if they weren't legit, Christ would have spoke against them. Because remember, Christ read these. He studied all the scripture growing up. He knew every word of it. If there was something in one of these books that was super like, don't believe this, it's evil, it's wrong, and this book is something you shouldn't read, he would have said so. He didn't. He didn't speak out against them. So there's something to that to be said. But what I want to get across, I'm not going to go into detail about everything that happens with Reuben because he had sex with his dad's concubine. What I want to get at is what I think the real message is that his father shouldn't have had a concubine. You know, I said it before, his father shouldn't have had multiple wives. You know, people put the Christ monarchy on these patriarchs, and you shouldn't. They're not perfect men. Yes, they're good and righteous, but they have many flaws. You know, even King David, look at him. And Jacob's no different. He had a concubine, a prostitute, a woman who was just for sex for him. That's all she was for him to get his rocks off. Well, what kind of message are you sending to your sons? What else is Reuben going to think of this woman? It's not his mother. It's not his aunt. It's not even his brother's mother, you know, because his dad's a polygamist. No, it's just some object, basically. You know, I'm not saying he probably beat her or anything, but he saw her as an object for sex because that's how his father, in his eyes, his father saw her. So what's the big deal? What's the big deal if I have sex with her? You're doing it, Dad. And there's a message to that. You know, your sins, the things that you do as a father, your flaws are going to be seen by your children. And if you're a virtuous, righteous man, like Jacob was, they're going to see you as this righteous man. So, it must not be wrong to have a concubine. It must not be wrong to just have sex with this woman who isn't my wife, because my dad does it. My dad's such a righteous man, so there's nothing wrong with it. And that's something you need to be aware of if you're going to be a father, you know, or even if you're just going to be like an uncle or a role model in any way. If you're going to be anybody, but especially if you're going to be a role model, like, you're a good man. It's almost worse when you do a terrible sin or something like that when you're a good man, because it's almost like teaching others to do bad in the name of good. You know what I'm saying? If Jacob had repented and made it known that this is wrong, then he would have been seen as a hypocrite, but at least his sons would have been known that it's wrong. You know, he's a righteous man, so his sons see him as a righteous man, so they see what he does and they emulate it. And what he does is has sex with concubines. So his son's like, oh, what's the big deal? I'll do the same thing. Well, obviously it's a big deal. Obviously it's wrong. And it's even more wrong in God's eyes because having sex outside of marriage is wrong. First of all, having sex with multiple women is wrong. And especially having sex with someone that your father is having sex with is super wrong in God's eyes. So a whole bunch of nasty stuff comes from this, and it's not good. But what I want people to understand is, as a role model, you need to be aware that you could be a great person, and that's great. But your flaws are then going to be seen as part of possibly being okay. You know, oh, he's such a virtuous, righteous person, and he does this, so what's the big deal? Maybe I can do it too. And that's the real message that people miss with this verse 22, because they just brush it over. Reuben has sex with his father's concubine because his father has a concubine. So his father has sex with just women just to have sex with them. So what's the big deal? Why can't I do it? And then it goes through his sons. All right. And then he comes unto Isaac his father, unto Mamre. All right. And the days of Isaac were 180 years. And Isaac gave up the ghost, and died, and was gathered unto his people, being old and full of days. And his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. So his sons came back together to bury their father. Now Esau and Jacob don't continue to always get along, and we'll see this later on. Particularly their sons and their lineages don't get along. And I think we see this a lot in families, you know. Brothers might get along, but brothers' kids don't get along due to inheritance and stuff like that. But specifically, just notice he lived 104 score years, so pretty old. They're still living pretty long because they're still relatively close to the time of the flood, prior to the flood. They haven't brought totally down to those 120 years yet. And Jacob and Esau bury him. And again, I mean, watch my older videos. People can talk about how the Bible's crazy because of the years that they live. But I know science, and I think there's plenty of legitimate proof that people lived this long. I mean, think about the second law of thermodynamics. Things are always moving towards a state of chaos, moving away from the original energy source. So the first created, if you believe in creation, first created man is going to be the best. And it's going to slowly deteriorate over time after that. You know, it's just common scientific knowledge. Not to mention the fact, and this again is also a pretty well-known theory, pretty respected theory in science, in that the layer of our atmosphere that's basically like water, you know, that reflects a lot of radiation and whatnot, used to be a lot thicker. You know, and this is kind of why dinosaurs and things like that were able to grow so much more, and it had more oxygen in the earth and all this stuff. And I believe when the flood happened, and the waters of heaven came, it was this layer of our atmosphere, part of it shrunk. It became much smaller. And this goes back to scientists think this also. They don't believe necessarily the biblical aspect of it, but it's the same concept that this layer of H2O that reflects certain things and keeps more oxygen, blah, 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 or carbon dioxide or whatever, shrunk, water fell down, and because it shrunk, more radiation is allowed in, and thus reducing our lifespan, reducing the amount of the nutrients that we need, and reducing the amount of oxygen, and increasing the amount of radiation that we're exposed to, thus decreasing the lifespan. It's really, like, people just want to argue. It's so funny when people just want to argue the Bible, and then you state some facts because you actually know your science or your history or your anthropology and all this stuff, and they just look at you like, but people don't live that long anymore. It's ridiculous. They didn't even have soap. You know, like, well, you know, look into some stuff, guys. Anyway, I hope everyone enjoyed this. Nothing too exciting happens in this one, but the one main thing, and it's such a quick verse, you can look over it, Genesis 35:22, where Reuben has sex with his father's concubine. Remember, Jacob should never have had a concubine. That's not okay with God. And he's teaching his sons things that are not okay. Don't ever put the Christ monarchy on the patriarchs. Look at them as men, just like you or I, who have their flaws, who have their shortcomings that they have to deal with. Now, God still loves them and takes care of them, just like he loves and takes care of us. But that doesn't mean he's okay with their sin. Doesn't mean he's okay with their flaws. Something to be aware of and remember. All right, everybody have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or good night. God bless.